everyone, and welcome back to the Young and the Restless channel. I hope you're all having an amazing day today. Get ready because we've got exciting updates lined up just for you. Before we dive in, don't forget to hit that subscribe button right now and smash that. Like if you enjoy staying updated with daily drama news and spoilers. Your support means everything. It helps this channel grow and keeps fresh content coming to you every single day. So come join our growing family, stay connected, and never miss a moment of the drama. Let's jump right into today's update. The week of the Young and the Restless from May 20th through May 29th, 2026 unfolds like a storm slowly gathering over Genoa City, pulling every major player into a tangled web of secrets, power struggles, addiction, and shifting loyalties. What begins as business deals and family concerns quickly spirals into betrayal, desperate choices, and emotional breakdowns that threaten to reshape everything. At the center of it all, Nick Newman is sliding deeper into denial, Phyllis Summers is playing a dangerous double game with consequences she can no longer fully control, and Victor Newman is tightening his grip on a deal that could destroy multiple lives. Meanwhile, unexpected romantic turns, family interventions, and long-buried grudges begin to resurface, setting the stage for an explosive chain of events. On Wednesday, May 20th, the final day of May sweeps delivers immediate tension alongside surprisingly hopeful moments. Billy Abbott reassures Sally Spectra that he will not be arrested, and together they begin dreaming about their future, diving headfirst into wedding planning. Billy even reaches out to a professional planner, Pietro, known for organizing Nikki's grand party, only to discover that the earliest availability would be 2029, far too long to wait for a couple eager to start their life together. Refusing to be discouraged, Sally insists they will handle everything themselves, while Billy playfully suggests extravagant ideas like a destination wedding or even a carnival-themed celebration. They briefly consider something small and intimate, but Sally's heart is set on something unforgettable for her first wedding. In a deeply personal moment, she expresses her desire to walk down the aisle visibly pregnant, embracing her new chapter without hesitation, and she has already begun sketching ideas for her dress. Billy, completely captivated by her enthusiasm, is overjoyed at the thought of marrying her, and they ultimately decide on an October wedding, sealing their future with excitement and optimism. But that warmth is sharply contrasted by Nick Newman's increasingly unstable behavior. At Crimson Lights, he drops a pill baggie and quickly scrambles to hide it just as Victoria walks in, already frustrated over family tensions and lingering Newman conflicts involving Phyllis. As she opens up about their fractured parents and Phyllis's hold over Newman Enterprises, Victoria grows increasingly concerned about Nick's behavior, sensing something is deeply wrong. Nick brushes off her worries, claiming he's been managing everything, even insisting he attended an initial rehab meeting. But Victoria doesn't buy it, especially when she notices how unnaturally calm and distant he seems. Pressed further, Nick lies again, blaming his state on meditation he claims to have recently started practicing. Victoria continues probing, clearly alarmed, while Nick stubbornly doubles down on his story, hiding the truth as his addiction quietly tightens its grip and leaves Victoria both worried and frustrated by his refusal to be honest. Meanwhile, Victor Newman and Michael Baldwin are locked in a high-stakes confrontation with Phyllis Summers. Victor issues a firm ultimatum. Phyllis has until the end of the day to hand over both Matt Clark and control of her company if she wants to avoid criminal charges. Michael warns Victor that this course of action carries risk for everyone, especially given Victor's own involvement in AI-related dealings. But Victor remains unmoved. His only hesitation comes from personal ties. He does not want to send Phyllis to prison because she is the mother of his granddaughter, though he makes it clear he will if she refuses to comply. Michael relays that Phyllis believes the Newmans would rather have Matt than her company, but Victor insists he needs both. Upstairs at the GCAC, Matt Clark is growing suspicious and increasingly agitated as he questions Phyllis's insistence that he remain hidden. He doesn't understand why she is protecting him after everything he has done, while Phyllis insists that people deserve second chances and that her instincts tell her this version of Matt can be trusted. Matt, however, only wants to leave Genoa City to end the conflict, but Phyllis warns him he would be caught immediately if he steps outside. She offers to negotiate a deal, yet doubts about whether his memories could return and turn him dangerous again hang heavily between them. When Matt insists on leaving anyway, Phyllis agrees to drive him wherever he wants. But the moment he turns to pack, she violently knocks him unconscious with a steel picture frame and restrains him, revealing just how far she is willing to go to maintain control of the situation. That same chain of manipulation continues as Michael demands to meet Phyllis. In a calculated move, she snaps a photo of the bound and gagged Matt before heading down to face him, showing just how far she has escalated the situation behind closed doors. Michael informs her that Victor's deadline still stands, end of day for both Matt and the Newman demands. But Phyllis, now fully detached from compromise, declares she is done negotiating with Victor and abruptly fires Michael. She insists she can handle everything herself, despite Michael's growing anger and frustration as he reminds her she once begged for his help. Furious at her recklessness, Michael storms out and immediately reports back to Victor that Phyllis has cut him loose, leaving Victor to deal with her directly. In the aftermath, Phyllis contacts Nick and signals she is ready to finalize their deal, sending him proof of Matt's capture. Nick, still entangled in his own compromised state, relays that Christine Romolotti is willing to proceed but needs verification. When Phyllis sends the image of Matt bound and helpless, Nick accepts it, satisfied that the condition of the deal has been met, even as the morality of the situation continues to spiral downward. By Thursday, May 21st, the emotional pressure begins to fracture several families at once. Nikki and Victor attempt to ignore their marital tension as they unite over concerns about Nick, with Victoria and Adam likely pushing them toward a full intervention. Nick's refusal to admit his addiction raises the question of whether he would even show up, especially as he remains focused on his dangerous deal with Phyllis. At the same time, Jack Abbott finds himself seeing Patty Williams in a new light after she provides him with truthful information about Victor's past actions. While Jack initially considers using that information to damage Victor and Nikki's marriage, his perspective begins to shift in a way that could change his entire strategy. Kyle Abbott presses his father, questioning whether Jack still intends to use Patty in his vendetta against Victor, especially since Kyle has his own desire to take Victor down. Elsewhere, Patty arrives at Matt's room at the GCAC and discovers him still tied up, exactly as Phyllis left him. Instead of immediately reporting it, she begins untying him, raising the possibility that she may remove him from the situation entirely and use him for her own purposes, potentially shifting the balance of control away from Phyllis. Meanwhile, the story briefly shifts away from Genoa City as Lily Winters arrives in New York alongside Stephanie and Holden Novak. They share champagne in what appears to be a celebratory moment, likely marking Malcolm Winters' successful transplant recovery, though the emotional weight of that storyline remains mostly off-screen and only indirectly felt. In contrast, Friday, May 22nd brings unexpected romantic developments when Claire Grace Newman and Holden find themselves growing closer in New York. Their dynamic shifts into something more intense and potentially physical, hinting at a deepening relationship that could complicate future events. At the same time, lingering questions remain about the secret Holden promised Claire involving Audra Charles, leaving tension beneath their romantic momentum. Back in Genoa City, Nikki stands firm in her position, potentially clashing with either Victor over the Matt situation or pushing back against Nick's refusal to accept rehab. Jack, meanwhile, makes a poor and potentially reckless decision that could escalate his conflict with Victor and cause trouble within his own marriage to Diane. As the week of May 25th through May 29th unfolds, the consequences of every decision begin to hit hard. Phyllis finds herself in a full-blown crisis after losing control of Matt to Patty, placing her directly in Victor's crosshairs and potentially exposing her to jail time if she cannot deliver on her end of the deal. Patty, meanwhile, begins forming an unexpected attachment to Matt, which could dramatically alter the power dynamics and even provide Jack with an opportunity if her fixation shifts away from Victor and toward Matt himself. Kane Ashby continues recovering from his donation procedure, while news of Malcolm's successful recovery brings relief, and Lily is expected to return to Genoa City soon to reconnect with him. Billy Abbott also visits Kane, likely discussing both wedding plans and Kane's upcoming legal troubles, adding another layer of uncertainty. Claire and Holden's connection continues to intensify. Nick sinks deeper into addiction and denial with his fentanyl use and resistance to rehab, and the Newmans may eventually be forced into a full intervention. At the same time, Jack's questionable decision from the prior week begins to loom large, threatening to spiral into serious personal consequences, especially in his relationship with Diane, as his attempts at payback against Victor push him further into dangerous territory. The fallout from those escalating choices begins to spread like wildfire across Genoa City, and what once felt like separate storylines now starts to collide in unpredictable and dangerous ways. Phyllis Summers is no longer just balancing risk, she is trapped inside it, watching every decision tighten the noose around her. With Matt Clark no longer under her reliable control after Patty's interference, the entire foundation of her leverage against Victor Newman begins to crack. What she once believed was a clean bargaining chip has now turned into a liability she cannot safely manage. And as Victor closes in from one side while chaos unfolds from the other, Phyllis is forced into a corner where desperation begins to replace strategy. The illusion of control is slipping away, and every move forward feels like it could be the one that destroys her completely. At the same time, Patty Williams is no longer acting like a wild card. She is becoming an active force of disruption. After discovering Matt in his restrained state, she doesn't simply react with shock or fear. Instead, something shifts inside her, a quiet but unsettling fascination taking root. She begins making decisions that are no longer aligned with Phyllis's interests and instead seem guided by her own growing attachment to Matt. That attachment slowly transforms into possession, and what started as a moment of impulse freeing him starts evolving into something far more dangerous. Matt himself becomes increasingly aware that escaping one captor may not mean freedom at all, especially if Patty decides she is the one who understands him best now. This subtle but powerful shift places him at the center of a new conflict, one that Phyllis never anticipated and may no longer be able to control. Meanwhile, Victor Newman continues tightening his strategic grip, even as emotional fractures begin forming within his own family. Nick's condition is no longer something that can be quietly managed or ignored, and Victoria and Adam's growing concern pushes the idea of a full intervention closer to reality. Nikki, standing between emotional concern and family stability, finds herself increasingly pulled into a confrontation she never wanted but can no longer avoid. Nick's refusal to admit the truth about his addiction creates a painful stalemate, where love and frustration collide without resolution. His insistence on maintaining control, while clearly spiraling, forces the Newmans into a position where decisive action may be the only option left. And yet, the emotional weight of confronting him threatens to fracture the family just as deeply as the addiction itself. Elsewhere, Jack Abbott's choices begin to echo with consequences he may not fully anticipate. His shifting intentions regarding Patty Williams and Victor Newman place him on unstable ground, especially as Kyle continues pressing him for clarity. Kyle's frustration grows as he watches his father drift between restraint and revenge, unable to fully commit to either path. Diane, meanwhile, begins sensing that Jack's decisions are not just strategic missteps, but emotionally driven risks that could jeopardize their entire future. The more Jack tries to outmaneuver Victor through indirect means, the more he risks losing control of his personal life in the process. And with Patty now acting unpredictably, Jack's earlier assumption that he could use her as a tool begins to look increasingly naive. In New York, the emotional tone shifts in a different direction. Yet even there, instability brews beneath the surface. Claire Grace Newman and Holden Novak's growing closeness deepens into something intimate and complicated, but it is not without unresolved tension. The secret Holden holds regarding Audra Charles continues to hover between them like an unspoken threat, shaping every interaction even in moments of warmth. Their connection becomes more intense, but also more fragile as emotional vulnerability and hidden truths begin to intertwine. What might appear as romance on the surface carries an undercurrent of uncertainty, suggesting that whatever is building between them could just as easily unravel once the truth comes out. Back in Genoa City, the pressure reaches a breaking point for multiple characters at once. Phyllis, now fully aware that her control over Matt has collapsed, must decide whether to double down on deception or attempt an escape from a situation she helped create. But neither option comes without risk, especially with Victor waiting for proof and Michael no longer willing to clean up her chaos. The alliances she once relied on are dissolving rapidly, leaving her increasingly isolated at the exact moment she needs support the most. And as Patty continues acting independently with Matt, the possibility of an entirely new power structure forming begins to take shape, one that no one fully understands yet. Kane Ashby's recovery continues quietly, offering a rare moment of stability in an otherwise volatile landscape, but even his storyline is not untouched by the surrounding tension. Lily Winter's return to Genoa City brings emotional potential and unresolved history back into focus, raising questions about whether their reconnection will lead to healing or renewed complications. Billy Abbott's visit adds another layer of disruption as he balances wedding excitement with discussions about Kane's legal uncertainty, reminding everyone that stability is still fragile at best. Even moments of celebration feel temporary, as the shadow of unresolved conflict lingers over every interaction. And then there is Nick Newman, still spiraling, still denying, and still refusing help. His condition is no longer something that can be hidden behind excuses or calm conversations. Every interaction now carries the weight of potential collapse, and the Newmans are rapidly approaching a point where passive concern is no longer enough. Whether through intervention or confrontation, something will have to break the cycle he is trapped in. But Nick's stubborn refusal to face reality ensures that whatever comes next will not be gentle. By the time the week of May 25th to May 29th fully takes shape, every storyline is no longer just progressing, it is converging. Phyllis's gamble with Matt, Patty's unpredictable transformation, Victor's relentless pressure, Jack's questionable judgment, and Nick's dangerous spiral all begin feeding into one another, creating a web of consequences that no single character can escape alone. Genoa City is no longer dealing with isolated crises. It is standing on the edge of a full-scale collapse of trust, control, and family loyalty, where every decision made in secrecy is now ready to come into the light with explosive force. As the pressure continues to build across Genoa City, the fragile balance between control and chaos begins to finally give way. What once felt like separate schemes and personal struggles now starts to merge into a single tightening current, pulling everyone closer to consequences they can no longer outrun. Phyllis Summers, in particular, finds herself standing at the center of a storm she helped create but can no longer predict. With Matt Clark no longer securely contained in the way she intended, every advantage she believed she held over Victor Newman becomes increasingly unstable. The confidence she once carried begins to fade, replaced by a growing awareness that she is no longer directing events. She is reacting to them. And in a world where Victor Newman is waiting for even the smallest misstep, reaction alone is never enough to survive. Patty Williams, meanwhile, continues her unsettling evolution from unpredictable disruptor into something far more dangerous, someone driven by personal conviction rather than simple chaos. Her decision to intervene in Matt's situation is not treated as a momentary impulse anymore, but as the beginning of a new fixation that reshapes her priorities entirely. As she spends more time with him, the line between rescue and possession begins to blur in ways even she does not fully understand. What she sees in Matt is not just a man in need of help, but something she believes she can define, reshape, and perhaps even redeem. That belief becomes powerful enough to override caution, logic, and any lingering awareness of how dangerous Matt himself could become if his past resurfaces. In that fragile space between trust and delusion, Patty begins making choices that quietly sever her from everyone else still trying to control the situation. At the same time, Victor Newman's patience is wearing thinner with every passing hour. The ultimatum he has placed on Phyllis is no longer just business. It has become a test of dominance, precision, and control. Michael Baldwin's exit from the negotiation only sharpens Victor's focus, removing the last buffer between him and direct confrontation. He is no longer interested in interpretations, excuses, or shifting loyalties. He wants results. And if Phyllis cannot deliver both Matt Clark and her corporate leverage, then Victor is prepared to ensure she loses far more than her company. Beneath that calculation, however, lies a quieter tension within the Newman family itself, as Nick's behavior continues to raise alarms that even Victor can no longer fully ignore. The balance between corporate warfare and family intervention begins to blur, forcing Victor into a rare position where personal and strategic crises collide. Nick Newman's downward spiral becomes increasingly visible even as he continues to insist nothing is wrong. His attempts to mask his condition grow more fragile with each interaction as those closest to him begin noticing inconsistencies that can no longer be explained away. Victoria and Adam's concerns intensify, and what started as suspicion begins turning into urgency. Nikki, caught between maternal instinct and emotional exhaustion, finds herself increasingly pulled toward action she is not fully prepared to take. Yet Nick's resistance remains firm, anchored in denial so deep that even concern from his own family is interpreted as interference rather than help. This emotional standoff creates a painful tension inside the Newman family dynamic, where love is no longer enough to break through the barriers Nick has built around himself. And as time passes, the fear grows that waiting for him to admit the truth may no longer be a safe option. Elsewhere, Jack Abbott's decisions begin to echo with consequences that extend far beyond his original intentions. His shifting stance toward Patty Williams introduces uncertainty not only into his rivalry with Victor, but also into his own moral boundaries. Kyle's frustration becomes more vocal as he watches his father drift between calculated restraint and emotionally driven retaliation. What Kyle wants is clarity and decisive action, but what Jack is demonstrating instead is hesitation shaped by personal history and unresolved resentment. Diane, too, begins to sense that Jack's involvement with Patty is not simply strategic, it is becoming personal in a way that risks destabilizing everything he has built. The danger is no longer just what Victor might do in response, but what Jack himself might choose to do if pushed too far. And with Patty no longer behaving like a predictable asset, the situation becomes even more volatile. In New York, the emotional tone remains deceptively lighter on the surface, yet even there, instability lingers beneath each interaction. Claire Grace Newman and Holden Novak continue to grow closer, their connection deepening in ways that feel both exciting and precarious. Moments of intimacy are underscored by unspoken tension, particularly surrounding the secret Holden has promised regarding Audra Charles. That unresolved truth hangs over them like a shadow that neither romance nor distance can fully erase. The more their bond strengthens, the more fragile it becomes, as emotional trust is slowly layered over incomplete honesty. What appears to be a new beginning may instead be a temporary pause before truth forces its way back into the center of their relationship. Back in Genoa City, Phyllis reaches a critical emotional and strategic tipping point. With Michael gone, Victor pressing, and Matt no longer securely contained, she is forced to confront the reality that every safeguard she built is now collapsing. The photo she once used as proof of leverage now feels less like power and more like evidence that could be turned against her. Each alliance she relied on begins to fracture under pressure, leaving her increasingly isolated at the worst possible moment. And as Patty's unpredictable attachment to Matt grows stronger, Phyllis is confronted with the unsettling realization that she may have lost control not just of a situation, but of the very person she intended to use as her bargaining chip. In this shifting landscape, survival becomes less about winning and more about avoiding total ruin. Kane Ashby's storyline continues unfolding in quieter contrast to the surrounding chaos, yet even his recovery becomes part of the broader emotional fabric of the week. Lily Winter's return introduces a renewed emotional undercurrent, bringing unresolved history and lingering feelings back into proximity. Billy Abbott's involvement adds another layer of complexity, blending personal celebration with serious discussions about legal and financial uncertainty. Even in moments of apparent stability, the presence of unresolved conflict ensures that nothing remains purely peaceful for long. Every conversation carries subtext, every reunion carries history, and every hopeful moment is shadowed by what still remains unresolved. And through it all, Nick Newman remains the most unpredictable variable of them all. His refusal to accept help, acknowledge his addiction, or even recognize the severity of his situation places him on a collision course with his own family. The Newmans are no longer debating whether intervention is necessary. They are approaching the point where it becomes unavoidable. But forcing the issue risks breaking something that may already be dangerously fragile. In this way, Nick becomes both the emotional center and the most unstable force in the entire week's unfolding drama. As the week of May 25th to May 29th moves toward its peak, the interconnected nature of every storyline becomes impossible to ignore. Phyllis's collapsing control, Patty's shifting allegiance, Victor's relentless pressure, Jack's uncertain judgment, and Nick's spiraling addiction are no longer separate arcs. They are converging threads in a single, tightening web. Each decision fuels the next, each secret deepens the consequences, and each character moves closer to a moment where retreat is no longer possible. Genoa City is no longer simply facing conflict. It is standing at the edge of a chain reaction that has already begun, and nothing will remain unchanged once it fully arrives.